Rubber dampers are an essential piece of archery equipment. They're super useful in making your bow feel and sound better. They work well for compound, recurve, and barebow archers. In this video, we're going to cover what rubber dampers do, which rubber dampers RamRods offers, as well as how to pick the right one and how to set it up on your bow. Let's get into it. So how do rubber dampers work? When you release the string, vibration travels down your limbs, through the riser, into your grip, and out into your stabilizer. This transmits shock into your hand and radiates sound into the air. The vibration hits the damper, and the damper lags behind that applied force, compressing and deforming and dissipating that vibration energy. Rubber is really effective at this, and it converts sharp spikes of vibration into softer, longer pulses, and returns to its original form quickly. Let me take you through an overview of the RamRods EQ Rubber Damper lineup. First off, we have the cylinder damper. This damper is super cool because it blends in perfectly with your weight stack. So if you're shooting RamRods 1.25-inch disc weights, it's going to match that exact same diameter and has the same ridges going down so that it just sleekly, smoothly blends in with your setup. These dampers are ideally going to be placed between two other weights, although you can put them right on the end of your stabilizer like you see here. Next, we have the EQ taper damper. The taper damper acts kind of like our blender weight, and its job is to go right on the end of the stabilizer and blend from that stabilizer diameter into the same diameter as our steel weights. Next up, we have the barrel damper, which is probably going to fit the most people out of the entire lineup, and that's because it's just so flexible. You can do just about anything with it. You have a 1-inch diameter face, nice barrel design. One side's a little weaker, one side's a little stiffer. You can flip it around and you get different kinds of reactions. This is going to work great right on the end of your stabilizer. It's going to work great splitting your weight stack with weights on both sides, or putting it somewhere on your bow where you want to add a little bit more damping and weight. And finally, we have the bow damper. The bow damper also has an aluminum collar at the base, which is removable. You can choose to use it or not. This is designed to fit anywhere on your riser or stabilizers to provide a little bit more mass weight and vibration reduction wherever you need it. Some really popular spots to do it are going to be the top of the riser or the back portion of the riser right below the grip. But anywhere that you have that 5/16/24 thread size, you can put an EQ bow damper there and play around and find what works for you. So when you go check these dampers out on our website, you're gonna see that we offer multiple stiffnesses for several of these dampers in the lineup. What the stiffness is it's a measure of the durometer of the rubber that we use to make that damper. In this case, a lower number indicates a weaker or softer damper, and a higher number indicates a stiffer or firmer damper. In the RamRods cylinder damper, we offer a 30, 40, and a 50 durometer, with 50 being the stiffest. The 50 is going to be for somebody who likes to have a lot of mass weight on their bow, or maybe they want just a little bit of movement out of a damper, but not too much. They want to keep everything feeling pretty tight and locked down. Probably even splitting their weight stack so that they don't have too much on the end of the damper flexing it. And then if you're on the other side of the spectrum, maybe you want to have a little bit more vibration reduction, you want a little bit more movement out of your weight stack, or you just don't use a lot of weight and you actually need a softer damper to get that feel that you're looking for, you might go with something like the 30. And then if you're in between, you've got the 40. In the RamRods taper damper, we only are offering a 40 stiffness, and this is going to fit a lot of people, but because this one's designed to go just on the end of the stabilizer, not so much for splitting the weight stack, you don't need as many stiffness options. And in the EQ barrel damper, we're offering a 40 and a 50. So if you're shooting kind of a medium to high amount of weight, those are both going to be great options for you. And finally, the EQ bow damper only comes in a 30, because most people aren't putting that much weight when they're adding a damper somewhere on the riser. Before we jump into picking what dampers you're going to use on your bow and exactly how you're going to tune them to set them up, we do want to cover a little bit about the principles of setting up dampers and the effects that different types of movements can have on how they feel and perform. So using our EQ cylinder damper as an example here, you can see that I've split my weight stack so I have weights on both sides. What this does is it lets me use 8 ounces in total, but I'm only flexing the damper with 4 of those ounces. From here, you can tune how any damper feels by how much weight you put on the outside versus the inside of the damper. If, for example, putting 4 ounces on each side of the cylinder damper was too stiff for me, I could make an adjustment so that I have maybe 6 ounces on the end and 2 ounces between the stabilizer and the damper. If that was still too stiff, I could go to have no weights at all, put the damper straight onto the stabilizer, and put all my weights on the end. Once we start loading more weight outside the damper, it's going to react much softer and weaker. And on the other side, if I want it stiffer, I can start to remove weight from the outside and stack it on the inside. So if you want a different reaction from your damper, keep in mind that you can adjust where you're putting those weights and make a soft damper act much stiffer or a stiff damper act much softer. Let's walk through a relatively lightweight recurve setup that could fit a lot of people. And for this build, we're going to have some K2 stabilizers. And on the damper side, we're going to be using 2 of our taper dampers for the side rods. And we're going to be using the barrel damper for the front rod. So starting off, I'm going to put my taper dampers right on the end of the stabilizer. That's how they're intended to be used. And then I'm going to put 2 ounces right on the end. There is number 1. Number 2, these are the tapers in a 40 durometer, which is our medium stiffness. That's going to work for pretty much most recurve setups as long as you're not going super, super heavy. And finally, long rod, we're going barrel damper on the front. If I was using a bit more weight here, I would probably split my weight stack. But for this setup, we're going to go with just 4 ounces right on the end. And just like that, we have a full lightweight recurve setup with the taper dampers and the barrel damper. And maybe you're thinking, well, that's cool, but I want more vibration damping. Well, then you're going to want to throw some bow dampers on. So let's take some of these with a little bit of weight on the front. And for this build, I'm just using like a 1/2 ounce weight because this is our lightweight setup. We're not trying to get too crazy. And I'm going to put 1 of these on the top of the riser where my top limb is going to go. This is going to give me a little bit more of a quick spin when I follow through. It's also moving a little bit of weight above the grip. And then I could put also another damper right below the back of my grip here. This is another super popular location. And this is going to just kind of increase the feeling of mass weight in your riser, which can have a nice effect for aiming or follow through depending on what your preferences are. And that's going to fit right in there. If you wanted these dampers to react even a little bit softer, you could remove the aluminum collar that is at the base, and that's going to make them a little bit lighter and a little bit softer. And that could be a good setup for someone who's looking for more vibration reduction and they don't need very much stiffness out of their dampers. All right, now let's say you want to beef up this recurve setup and you want to use a significant more amount of weight, and you want to make sure that your damper setup is going to accommodate that and still feel really good. So I'm going to make a couple of changes here. First, we're going to switch from the taper damper to the barrel damper for both of my side rods. That's going to give me just a bit more stiffness. That's going to support the added mass weight that I want to put on. So let me remove both of these. And I'm also going to make a durometer change, and I'm going to go from the 40 stiffness on my front rod I'm going to increase that to a 50. And that's going to give me more stiffness to support a significant amount of weight on the end of my stabilizers. So now I'm going to take this 40 durometer barrel damper, and this is going to go ahead and become my side rod damper. I'm going to put 2 ounces on the inside of the damper and there. And then I'm going to put 4 ounces on the outside. So this is like a 6-ounce setup where I'm splitting my weight stack because I still want to keep this thing feeling a little more on the stiff side. I don't want to weaken it up too much. And all right. So now my side rods are good to go. For my long rod, I'm going really crazy. I'm going to go ahead and put 12 ounces on here. And because of that, I'm going to be going to the 50 durometer on my front rod barrel damper. And one more. And these are our tungsten damping weights I've put on the end. So now we have really beefed up the amount of mass weight that is on this setup. But by splitting my weight stack and going to a stiffer and larger diameter damper with the barrel dampers, now I have a setup that's going to support that amount of weight, and it's going to keep the aiming feeling good while I still get a really nice vibration reduction after the shot. Next up, let's build a, let's say, normal weight compound setup. Nothing too crazy, but because it is compound, I am going to split my weight stack from the very beginning. So for my back bar setup here, I'm going to do 12 ounces in total, and I think I'm going to go with 8 ounces right up against my stabilizer. And then I'm going to use the EQ cylinder damper and a 50 durometer. And I'm going to put 4 ounces on the outside. Let me get that loaded up. And what this is going to do is it's going to let me have a really nice hold and not have anything get floppy or weird or weak while I'm aiming, but I'm still going to get just a nice, reasonable damping effect at the end of the shot. And I can still do all that, loading my back bar up with 12 ounces, which is a very respectable amount of weight. Not everybody goes much heavier than that. And that is the start of my side rod setup. For the long rod, I'm going to go ahead and go with 8 ounces on the front. And I'm also going to be splitting a 50 durometer cylinder damper in between. And that's going to keep my front rod plenty stiff with only 4 ounces on the end for aiming. And then from here, again, if I was still feeling like this was a little bit more flex and movement out of the dampers than I wanted, I could remove some weight from the end and I could put that on the inside of the damper, and that would stiffen up the feel of the stabilizer setup. And then let's say that I want to go from here and I want to go even heavier. I would grab a set of 50 durometer barrel dampers. And for this setup, we're going to optimize it for, like, I want the stiffest damper setup possible. I want very little to no movement out of my bars because I don't want to have any negative effect to my aiming. So with that setup, we're going to go ahead and put even more weight on the inside and add another 4 ounces here. And then I'm only going to put 2 ounces on the outside of my barrel damper. And that is going to mean that when I'm aiming and executing the shot, I'm getting very little to no movement out of this damper. But at the moment of execution, I'm going to get just a little bit of flex, just enough to help tone down maybe some of that higher frequency vibration that is annoying to me. So it might look something like that. And then we'll go ahead and swap out the front bar as well. Swapping out the 50 cylinder for the 50 barrel. And just like on my side rod, I'm going to add a bit more weight, but I want to keep my dampers feeling as stiff as possible. I am just putting 2 ounces on the outside of my 50 durometer damper. And that's going to make sure that I have very, very little to no flex out of this thing. It's not going to impact my aiming negatively, but I'm still going to get a nice vibration reduction during follow through. And that might look something like that. And once you kind of understand the principle of moving more weight inside the damper until you get the stiffness you want, you're going to be able to tune most compound setups to be able to use a damper and not have it affect your aiming or feel like anything's getting too floppy. And finally, let's set up a barebow riser with some dampers and weights to show some different ways that you could outfit your kit and experiment to find the right feel. So first off, I'm going to put on a taper damper onto the top of the riser. And because this particular riser is a little low on clearance, I'm not going to be able to fit much on the end of that. But if you have a riser that's a little bit slimmer, you're going to have a lot more flexibility. Let's go ahead and put a barrel damper on the underside of my grip here. Help me move that center of gravity down a little bit. And then let's go with a bow damper on my bottom limb. I have one of our 1/2 ounce weights on here for just a little more flex out of the damper. And then I will round it out with a shield weight, which if you wanted to, you could also throw on some tungsten damping weights onto here. Another option for vibration reduction on a barebow setup. But then we have to make sure that we're going to fit through the ring. So after I snug this down, we are going to do a little check. And we clear the top. We're going to clear the bottom, clear the shield weight, and finally just barely be able to clear over the bow damper. And I didn't have to flex any of the dampers to get through the ring, so this setup is legal. And depending on what riser mounts you have, you can do a lot of cool stuff with dampers. So try different things, experiment, and find something that gives you the reaction that you're looking for. All right, that wraps it up for the RamRods EQ Rubber Damper line. We hope you got some cool ideas on how to tune your dampers and find the right setup for you, but let us know in the comments, how do you like to set up your dampers? Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.